Well, hello, it's 2 o'clock now, and I would like to start this webinar. The webinar is on physical sciences and engineering in ERC. And my name is Anne Overgaard Jørgensen, and I work at the Danish National Contact Points for the European Research Council, ERC. And I'm really pleased to have to be presenting this webinar, as we have two really brilliant speakers for the webinar. After the webinar, we will send out slides and a recording of the webinar. And if you have any questions for the webinar, please use the Q&A function. Briefly, I want to touch upon our function as national contact points. We are based in the Danish Ministry of Science and Education, where we are 12 people working as national contact points, and we cover all aspects of Horizon Europe. And if you work at a Danish institution, you can contact us free of use. And we give guidance on choosing the relevant Horizon Europe topic, not just ERC, but all 3 pillars in Horizon Europe we advise about. And we give guidance along the process when you're applying for funding. And we can also assist you in partner search. We are free of use, and you can use us as much as you want to and as much as we have time for. We also do a number of other activities. We do a lot of communication activities. We have a dedicated web page, both in Danish and also in English, where you can find small sort of pieces on information on European research activities in Horizon Europe. And we also do a magazine, which is out a few times a year on print, about various research and innovation aspects on Horizon Europe. And of course, we do webinars like this one, and we do courses, information meetings. And also we are willing to come out and give a speech on a specific topic. If you want us, you can always invite us. And of course, you can contact us by email or phone if you have any questions about Horizon Europe. Today we have a really nice program. Firstly, we have a presentation by Dr. Thelma Calvado from European from ERC's executive agency in Brussels, and she has a scientific background and has worked at a number of years at the ERC's executive council and know this area really in depth. So I'm really looking forward to your presentation, Thelma. Afterwards, we have a presentation by Professor Eugene Polsek from the University of Copenhagen. He is one of the few Danes who have received 2 advanced grants, so this is quite impressive. And before that, he also have experience as a panelist from ERC, so he also know ERC really, really well. After their presentations, it's time for a Q&A session, and you can type in questions from now on and later on if you have any questions you want them to elaborate on. Yeah. So thanks, I'll give the word to Dr. Thelma.
Okay, then, thank you. Anna, I will share my presentation now.
Yeah, and I will stop sharing mine.
So I believe you can see my presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, then, good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much, Anna, for the opportunity you gave me to come here to tell about the funding schemes offered by the European Research Council. My name is Thelma Carvalho. I'm head of sector of computer sciences and engineering in the scientific department of the agency. And today, okay, also as usual, it doesn't work. So we just try this out. And I should be able to move my presentation. Okay. And today I'm here for you because you want to know about ERC and about its grant schemes, because you want to know about our evaluation process, because you are working in physical sciences and in engineering, and because you are dreaming of applying for an ERC grant. So as you can see here, this is a long process, so you need to start early. This is a long run, but if you start early enough and if you train enough, you will be arriving to the finish as a winner, and you will be able to have your ERC grant. So let me start by setting the bar and tell you that what is the mission statement of the executive agency. So we are here dedicated for selecting and funding the excellent ideas that have not happened yet, and the scientists that are dreaming them up. So this really sets the bar high, and you know what we are looking for. So in terms of ERC, I think we are pretty known after our beginning in 2007. So we are all known for offering long-term research grants, and those grants are offered to individuals that can be wherever in the world, but with the condition that if they will get a grant from ERC, they will have to come and stay at least 50% of their time working with the community in Europe or in the associated countries. So this is to say that ERC is not in favor of a brain drain, but is in favor of brain circulation. So it is even allowed to have a double affiliation outside Europe, but you will have to stay 50% of your time working with our researchers. Then you will be able to transfer your knowledge, and it will be a valuable experience as well. So we are looking for high risk, high gain pioneering projects in any field of science. So we are in any case organized by domains, and we have 3 main domains covering all areas of science. So life sciences, physical sciences, and engineering and social sciences and humanities. So also, you know that the ERC grants are portable. This also gives you a good negotiating power with our institution to make sure that you have all the conditions you need to bring your project to fruition. So as I already said, you can work in a research topic of your choice with the team that you so wish. So you can pick up the best people in the world to come to work with you. You can collaborate with whom you think is the best to be able to deliver your objectives of a challenging research project. And what we see also is that ERC works as a kind of a quality label. This is to say that researchers that got an ERC grant have more facility to attract additional funding. So we can say that ERC offers independence, recognition, and visibility. So as you know, we have individual grants of different types, and the idea is that we can cover the different career stages of a researcher. So we have therefore the different schemes organized as a function of the time since when you got your PhD. So if you got your PhD between 2 and 7 years ago, then you qualify as a starter, and you can apply for a grant with a maximum of 1.5 million, and you can ask 1 million extra if you are needing access to large facilities, if you want to purchase major equipment, if you are carrying out a project that is highly experimental and you have field work involved, or if you are outside Europe and you want to come and establish yourself for the duration of the grant as a minimum in Europe. So there is indeed a financial incentive for people that are outside Europe to come to Europe to carry out their research grant. So if you already got your PhD longer ago, between 7 and 12 years ago, then you will be considered as a consolidator. There, the maximum fund is 2 million. Again, with this up to 1 million extra for the 4 conditions I just mentioned, the duration is up to 5 years. So this duration is the same for the different schemes, individual schemes, and therefore this is also there present for advanced grant. Those are the biggest of the individual grants we have, 2.5 million, again with this million extra that can be applied. And in this case, the researcher that is applying for this is already has an excellent scientific track record with recognized achievements in the last 10 years. So for all grants, you have to submit your CV, but in the specific case of advanced grants, you have your track record that corresponds to the last 10 years of your activity. We also have the synergy grants, and on purpose, I'm not going to use that is a grant that requires cooperation between 2 and 4 researchers, because what we are looking in the synergy grants, it goes much beyond collaboration. It really needs to have a synergetic collaboration in relation between the different researchers. This is to say that if we would have 4 researchers having 4 individual grants, they would reach much less than what they will reach if they are working under a synergy grant. So those grants are also very ambitious, and therefore here the duration is up to 6 years. So it's 1 year longer than a regular individual grant. The maximum size is 10 million, up to 4 million extra for the reasons I just mentioned. And here we are truly open to the world, because it is possible to have a research partner that is established outside the EU or associated countries. So let's say if you would like to work with a researcher from the UK or Switzerland, this or the US, you name it, this is possible. So from the different people or the different researchers participating, one of them can be from outside Europe or associated countries. And then finally, we have the proof of concept grants that are of 150,000 euros. Those are relatively small grants, are lump sum grants. And here the idea is to demonstrate if something that was researched in your individual grants or in your synergy grant has a potential for innovation with economic and societal impact. So you can have several of those grants throughout the life of your main grant, I mean the proof of concept, but you can only have one running at a time. So in terms of the evaluation principle, as you know, excellence is the only criteria we are using, but is excellence of the idea and is excellence of the principal investigator in terms of his or her intellectual capacity, creativity, and commitment. In terms of the research idea, then this is, we are assessing, or the panels are assessing, the groundbreaking nature, the potential for a scientific impact, as well as the approach that is going to be used. So how do we make the evaluations? The evaluations are made based on a set of panels. So you see here all the panels we have. We have currently 27 panels. Most recently, and more specifically at the beginning of Horizon Europe, we have included a new panel, that is panel P11 on materials engineering, and also in social science and humanities, there was one additional panel added. There was SH7 on human mobility, environment, and space. So now the question that you need to pose if you want to submit a proposal is, how do I choose my submission panel? So you have to ask the question, in what field am I going to submit my proposal? What is the panel that is covering this field? It is very important. Of course, each panel has a title, as a subtitle, and a set of descriptors that try to describe the remit, the scientific remit of the panel. But it's very important and relevant that you look into our website, who was sitting in a certain panel previously. This gives you a clear idea of the expertise that is present in the panel, and therefore this can give you valuable information when you are drafting your proposal. So you have to decide what is the panel that is covering the field of your proposal. You have to decide what are the descriptors you are going to use. It's very important if you say this proposal is in the field of systems and communication engineering, P7 panel, that you use a descriptor that is within this panel. So if you believe that a descriptor in another panel is better describing the idea, then this should be the panel that should evaluate your proposal. So as I already said, please look into the composition of the panels in previous years. You also can see what are the projects that were also funded previously. Those two pieces of information are important and valuable before you start actually thinking about submitting a proposal. But you also must know that by default, a proposal is evaluated in the panel that the applicant chooses. So we only move proposals from one panel to the other in very exceptional cases. And this is if it's clear that a mistake was made, or that the expertise that it's needed to evaluate the proposal is in another panel. So those transfers are not done without a thorough analysis of the consequences of this transfer, and therefore always the panel chairs of those two panels, the panel to which the proposal was submitted and the panel to which the proposal is being transferred, they both need to be in agreement, and they both need to believe that this transfer will result in a better assessment of the proposal. So the structure of panels are there to help us, and in the end are the panel chairs that decide that the proposal should be moved because the relevant expertise is present elsewhere. So the applicant may also choose a secondary panel. So this secondary panel can be within a certain domain or can even go beyond the current domain. What we see is that proposals that are marked as being multidisciplinary have the tendency to have a lower success rate. We are aware of this, and we are doing everything we can to try to revert this tendency. And that's the reason why some time ago in Part B1, we specifically asked the applicant to indicate why this proposal needs expertise in another panel or in another domain, always as an attempt to make sure that those proposals have the same success rate. So, but it's also important that you know that the panel chair is the one that is selecting the reviewers to assess each proposal, and therefore a proposal submitted to one panel may require reviews from another panel, but equally a proposal with a secondary panel or keywords from a second panel may not require a review from a secondary panel. So it really depends on the scientific expertise present in a given panel to ensure that all expertise needed to assess a certain proposal is there present. If it's present in the panel, it's going to be only evaluated by the panel members. If extra knowledge is necessary, then we are going to reach out other panels looking for this expertise. So this is done by the panel chair that are the ones responsible for the overall scientific quality of the evaluation. So how do we evaluate proposals? I think everybody knows that the proposals are submitted at once and they are assessed in two steps. So we have the step one, where we have the panel members reading only one part of the proposal. In our jargon is the part B1, together with the CV and the track record, and they will be working in isolation, evaluating the proposals. Each proposal is evaluated by a minimum of 3 reviews. Normally 4 reviews are systematically present, and the panel comes to Brussels to discuss all those proposals and takes the decisions. There will be a set of proposals that will not have the quality to move on in the process, and therefore will receive scores. Some of those scores have some penalties in terms of resubmission. So if we have a B score, is a proposal that has some quality but not sufficient to move to step 2, there will be 1 year penalty. If the proposal has a C score, it means that the proposal does not have the quality. It will have a submission restriction of 2 years. So what we want, or the Scientific Council wants, is to avoid clogging the system with proposals without the quality to move on to step 2. At the end of step 1, there will be feedback provided to the applicants. And then, of course, there will be the proposals that are retained, and those will move to step 2. Normally, 1/3 of the proposals are retained and move to step 2. At step 2, as you know, there will be again the panel members looking to the proposals that always act as generalists, as well as the remote reviewers that are the real specialists in the field of the proposal. At that time, they will look to the full proposal. So it means part B1, B2, as well as the resources. And They will be working in isolation. And once this is done and their reviews are complete, there will be the time where applicants will have their interviews. And after the interviews, the panel will take the decision and finally rank the proposals. There will be all 8 proposals that have the quality necessary to be funded, but fortunately we have limited funds and will be only the ones that rank the highest that will get funding, and there will be proposals that have quality but not sufficient to be funded. So this is the way we do the assessment of the proposals, but first things first. So if you want to submit a proposal, there are a few things you have to know. So the first thing is you need to have a brilliant, original, and exciting idea. You need to know your competitors and what is the state of the art. You need to know why you are proposing your project. Why is your project important and timely? You need to design your research projects to implement your idea with your team. It's very important here, the emphasis, it's you. Those are individual grants. There is no problem if you collaborate with others, but it needs to be clear at any time that you are the driving force behind this idea. Those are individual grants, as I said. So you need to know that the proposals are assessed at step 1 by generalists and at step 2 by generalists and specialists. So you need to know that at step 1 we are assessing feasibility, while at step 2 we are assessing methodology and resources. So your project is high risk, high gain. So you will also need to have and to think about some risk mitigating measures. But while doing that, you have to be careful that the way you remediate something that goes less as expected, it doesn't decrease the level of ambition of your project. So this is also something very important that is certainly going to be assessed by the panel members. And then, of course, you need to have a CV that shows already scientific independence. Of course, this is taken in the context of your career development stage. So at ERC, we are particularly looking for multi or interdisciplinary proposals with cross boundaries between different fields of research, pioneering proposals addressing new and emerging fields of research, proposal introducing unconventional innovative approaches and scientific innovations. Okay, so now that you already have a fantastic idea, that you know your competitors, that you know with whom you want to work, then you can start writing your proposal. But first, you need to know how. So you have heard me telling about part 1, B1, part B2, and those are assessed at different stages by different people with different profiles, generalists against specialists. So the question is, how do I start writing? Do I start writing first part B1 or do I start writing first part B2? And I think our advice is you have to write both at the same time, because those 2 parts of the proposal serve different purposes. While part B1 to be read by generalists needs to spark curiosity and excitement in the panel member, and it actually will buy you an invitation for an interview. So panel members want to see more, they are curious, they want to see how you are tackled the challenges that you identify in part B1. In part B2, you have to impress with your plans, with the details. You need to know, you need to tell and the panel members and the specialists how you are going to develop your project. You are going to tell with whom, with what resources, what are the mitigating measures you are going to put in place in case something doesn't go as planned. So this all needs to be very well thought out and very clearly present in part B2. So our advice is that you need to carefully read the evaluation criteria and try to ensure that the reviewers will find all the answers that they need to evaluate the proposal. So you also know the questions that are asked at step 1, at step 2 in terms of the evaluation. So you must write your proposal in a way that all those questions can have an answer in part B1 and part B2, depending on the step that is under evaluation. So clearly part B2 is not a mere repetition of part B1. So now I would like to tell you about some myths and some rumors and misconceptions that exist around our program. So quite often people find that ERC only funds frontier research and does not fund applied research. This is not true. So as you have seen, when I introduced myself, I said I was the head of computer science and engineering. So those are basically the panel P6 on computer science and informatics. Those are the panel on systems and communication engineering, P7, P8 on products and processes. It's also a panel where there is a lot of applied research being requesting funding, and also P11 on materials engineering. So we do fund applied research. Also, another kind of misconception is that people believe that some panels are more successful than others. This is not so. I might even understand that people, when we publish our results and people go there and look and say, oh, P1, the panel on mathematics, just fund 2 proposals, while the P8 on products and processes fund 6 proposals. So P8 is much more successful than P1. This is not so, because the amount of proposals competing for the funding in P8 was much higher than in P1. So what you need to make sure is that you submit your proposal to the right panel without thinking that some panels are more successful than others. So this is a problem of miscommunication. So all panels have the same success rate because budget is distributed among panels as a function of demand. Also, all scientific fields are eligible for funding. So there are no predetermined priorities in our program. We are fully bottom up. So OST institution is not an evaluation criteria. This is all about excellent ideas by excellent people. The scientific gain is the evaluation criteria, while the societal and economical impact are not evaluation criteria. Nevertheless, you might have a proposal that will generate scientific new knowledge, but will also have societal and economical impact. There is nothing wrong with this. What cannot be happening is that proposals that do not have this impact, they're shown, will be penalized, because the only type of impact that you need to make is scientific. So that is the difference that needs to be highlighted. Also, we have nothing against having proposals with a shorter duration than 5 years. But the problem is that we are looking for ambitious projects, and to realize them, you need time. So it is normal that an ambitious project needs more time to be delivered. But there is nothing wrong to submit a project with shorter duration than 5 years. Also, when you put and you calculate your budget, this has to be in relation to the proposed research work. So just because you have at your disposal 1.5, if you're a starter, it does not mean that you need to use 1.5. This is the limit. So what the budget you have to put forward has to be in agreement to the work you want to carry out. So also applicant's career stage and the context under which this was developed does matter, and our panels do take this into account. So publication record is not a decisive factor for funding, but your publication record needs to be competitive. I will come back to this at a later stage when I will talk about this journal impact factor. So just maybe adding a little bit here, there's nothing wrong if a person has a journal in a paper in a Nature, one of the journals of the Nature family. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem is that you will have some people that do not have that, And if we don't look to what is published rather than where it is published, you might miss these people. So that's why we make such a reference to, you have to look to what is published and not where it is published, because we want to be inclusive and to give the same opportunity to all excellent researchers that are out there. So also having already an ERC grant, it doesn't guarantee that you will get a second one. So all this is discussed very thoroughly by the panels. So, and each proposal is evaluated on its own merits in comparison to the proposals that are competing in a certain call. That's also the reason why when sometimes proposals are submitted more than once, they will end up at different positions in the ranking list or even in another category in terms of the quality of the proposal, because the evaluation is always relative to the pool they are competing with. So in terms of the proposal submission, I would like to tell you some updates on the track record. So review of the funding strategy was done in light of DORA. DORA is the Declaration of Research Assessment, and this was integrated in the work program 2022. So journal impact factor is not accepted among the field's relevant bibliometric indicators that may be included as part of the publication track record. Okay, so the list of achievements under each principal investigator profile is not exclusive. Other types of achievements can be included if relevant for the research field and proposal. Within the page limits, principal investigators can provide a short narrative of the description of the scientific importance of the research output submitted as part of the proposal and of the role they had in the achievement or in the production of those achievements. In terms, continuing on still on the update of the guidance on track record, so CVs, templates for starters and consolidators no longer include a section in terms of supervision of PhD students or postdoctoral fellows. So supervision is not an element to be considered when assessing the merits of early career researchers. This is there to make sure that we are not discriminating researchers that do not have this possibility to have supervision experience because they are not working in academia, because they are working in some research labs that do not have this possibility, or because they had a special career path. So it was decided that this was not an element to be considered when assessing the merits of the applicant. Similar grant income is also not an element to be assessed when evaluating the excellence of the applicant, because again, researchers have different opportunities to acquire funding, and therefore we want to be inclusive and to avoid that researchers in some research environments in different countries will be automatically excluded. In fact, the funding ID is only there to allow you having an idea and judging in terms of the innovation of the project, of the topic that it's put there in the proposal. And on top of that, what you see also, it's not a complete funding record because you only see running projects and applications. So this was all made more explicit in our guidance to applicants. In terms of COVID, so we want to be fair and being aware of the impact of COVID. So therefore, we have changed our forms, and now Part B1, the template of Part B1 of the proposal includes a dedicated section to describe the impact of COVID in terms of the scientific productivity. So this is the way this information looks like, and you can tick the box that applies to you in terms of the impact of COVID. So it's exactly the same approach we have been using for career breaks or unconventional research career paths. So decisions and assessments are made by the panel on a case-by-case And then finally, what I would like to tell you is that for the work program 2023, we have changed the way we calculate the PhD eligibility reference date. So in that case, what we have seen in the past is that in different countries, the time that was mentioned in the diploma many times was much later than the time when the successful defense took place. So we want to make sure that everybody has the same opportunities, and therefore what now is used to count the eligibility window is exactly the date during which there was a successful defense of PhD. So allows for the eligibility window to reflect the real academic age instead of the administrative age of the PI. So puts an end to confusion about award according to national rules, bringing clarity to applicants. So this is something that this was changed in the work program 2023. So as you can see, we always strive to be inclusive and fair to everybody. And we have now 2 new categories for extension of the eligibility window, which are natural disasters and seeking asylum. This is the calendar for the calls 2023. So the starting and synergy and consolidator are already closed. We are now proceeding with those assessments. The only call that it's open is the advance call, whose deadline for submission is the 23rd of May. And then, of course, we still have 2 dates, cutoff dates for the proof of concept. But as I said, here you need to have a grant already running. So if there is a take-home message, is that if you are rejected, please keep trying, because what we see, and this is very clearly seen, is people that reapply, they have much higher success rate, because indeed they benefit from all the input that is given by the panel members and the remote reviewers that read your proposals. So just one of my last slides, just to tell you that there are different videos that we call the ERC classes, but I'm sure Anne is telling you this also very often. So you have different kind of videos that can help you in the different stages of the process. And then in terms of the statistics, I think I will skip this part because you know these figures, or Anne will be able to provide you these figures. Maybe then highlighting here one graph that shows that Denmark is quite strong in submitting proposals that were successful in the field of physical science and engineering. So this is a boost for you to keep submitting proposals in this area, as well as all the other areas. And also this slide here that shows the amount of ERC grants per population. So you can see that you're really on the front peloton. So please keep applying and keep this figure high. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Thelma. It was really useful and really detailed. Thank you so much for that. So far, we don't have any questions, so I'll pass on the word to Eugene Polsek. And if any of you in the audience have any questions, then of course feel free to type them in the Q&A, and we will do them after Eugene Polsek's presentation. I think we need to stop sharing the screen, Thelma, and then yeah, perfect. And then Eugene, you can share your screen.
Sure, I'll try that.
And as mentioned beforehand, Eugene has years of experience with ERC, both as a panel member, but also as a double advanced grantee, which is impressive.
Thank you. Well, in fact, Thelma said a lot, of course. Just 1 second, let me slideshow from the beginning. Do you see my slides?
Yeah.
Good. So Well, I wasn't aware of this wonderful introduction. Maybe I should have. But anyway, I'm just repeating here the basics, right? So I have only applied to advanced grants, and I've been on a panel for advanced grants. So advanced grants is my strong side, although I have reviewed proposals for starting and consolidators, and I gave some advice on that as well. But I'll mostly speak about advanced grants, and I am happy to entertain questions about all kinds of grants to the best of my abilities. So what we have here is, of course, common knowledge, right? So 2.5 million for an advanced grant for 5 years, plus 1 million in special cases, but those cases should really be special. Don't try to overdo it. And then there are 11 panels within our best of the world's physical engineering sciences. And as Thelma mentioned, cross-disciplinary proposals can be submitted. And from my experience, I can only second a statement that this is a tricky business. So, think carefully before you submit a proposal to 2 panels, because this is a product of the opinion of 2 panels, right? And the product is always less than one of the constituents if you judge it from 0 to 1. Right. So one thing that I would like to mention from the start, and in my opinion, this is true not just for the ERC proposals, but for any research proposal you want to do, and that is it should be a reasonable balance between the goals that you're pretty sure that you will achieve and the goals that you're pretty sure that you won't. So this, in my opinion, will give you a good balance between the, how should I say it, between the challenges and realistic nature of your proposal. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I hope you know what I mean. That is to say, you're working on something, you're seeing the result in the next couple of years, or 2 results, and then you put it in your proposal, and then you dream that if those 2 years are successful, then maybe you will get something even better in 5 years, and you put it there. Right, so this is known to the general public, and this is the list of the panels, and I personally was sitting on this fundamental constituents of matter, and I have to tell you that those panels are really made of reasonably good scientists. And those are scientists like you and me with good experience and high level of achievements and judgment themselves. And maybe on this note, I also have to tell you that in my opinion, but also in the opinion of many of my fellow scientists, the ERC program is by far the best we've ever seen from Brussels. Anything else is worse than that, but the very existence of European Union can be justified by just the presence of the ERC program, because this is really, you go there, and if you are good, then you have a high chance to get it, and there are very few strings attached. Right, so as we've heard from Thelma also that for advanced grants, for instance, there is a 2-step evaluation process. And in my opinion, within the field that I know, there is about maybe 100 to 200 applications per year within this PE2 panel. And then the scores ABC are given, and about a third, and maybe a little less, about 30 to 35 proposals go into the second step. And then in the second step, there are 3 full panel members, as we heard, and 3 external evaluators, and they all write reports. And then the panel gets together, and here the fighting begins. And this is a big deal, right? So the panel has to find 10, 11, probably max 12 in our field out of 30, 40 applicants. And this is typically tough, but doable. Right. And this I just again copied from the website. You can see it there. And let's see if I can comment on that. Right. So in my opinion, but clearly this is an outdated opinion, I thought that publications in high-ranking journals are sort of very important. And well, maybe the universe will change and they will not be that important, but you shouldn't be shy presenting your Nature papers if you have those. I completely agree that, in the best of the worlds, one has to read those papers because Nature publishes less than exciting papers once in a while. That's true. Anyways, so applications to high-profile international conferences, I think this is also typically a solid indication of the position of the applicant in the field. And we have just discussed with Thelma that I didn't see exactly the kind of the citation record as such in the application, but well, I personally would put the number of citations to your papers on the list of your 10 best papers, because in the end of the day, this is what your colleagues think about you. The other examples of typical rejection reasons: insufficient potential for independence. That's probably more like, well, it happens also in the advanced grant procedure, indeed, if the applicant has not yet been as in our field, the last author of enough influential papers, and so on. The proposed project, well, of course, it shouldn't be incremental, and of course, it should not be too narrow or too imprecise or unfocused, indeed. But in any way, those are general words, and every project is judged by the panel of 10 or 12 experts, and they look at it and they say, oh, wow, or they say, well, okay. So this 10-year track record, I tried to emphasize certain things that are relevant, in my opinion, in our business. Of course, those 10 representative publications. It is all certainly very much dependent, even within one panel. I remember heated discussions at the panel because, in the astronomy community, the authorship and the sequence of authors and the number of authors is just so different from, for example, quantum optics community, right? So how do you judge a paper where there are 200 authors, and where should your applicant be? But this is why the panel would have certain experts from hopefully each of the subfields, and those experts will explain to the rest that here is what you should be looking for. So it won't hurt if you specify what are the rules and typical conditions in the field, and what is your role in each of those 10 wonderful publications. That never hurts, definitely. Yeah, and I would still consider providing number of citations to each publication. Monographs, in my opinion, are less relevant, at least within our field, although it's of course amazing if one has those. Patents are also very important. I didn't highlight them here, but they are very important. But again, I don't think this is kind of completely critical. If one doesn't have patents, one still can invent the new theory of relativity. Invited presentations to internationally established conferences have and always will be one of the important criteria. I don't think we're fortunate to go on research expeditions too often. Organization of conferences is important, but I would say not as important as your research work. Prizes, awards, academy memberships, sure. Major contributions to the early careers of excellent researchers. I think this is important indeed. Budget. One thing that I advise of my experience is that it should be a reasonable budget between personnel and equipment consumables. And of course, it's true for the experimentalists. So I think the panel usually looks at the project as an entity and just thinking, of course, this is the project, and maybe the PI has other grants and so on, and maybe there is some overlap, but the panel is there to say, is this budget and this number of personnel and so on enough for this project? Is it feasible, and so on? Right. So another thing, which I don't know whether it's generally true or not, but I've seen situations where experimentalists have been granted more funding than theorists on average. The panel, I think this is true now, but it certainly was correct in the past, that, you know, if you ask for 2.5 million euros and the panel excludes certain expenses from your budget and gives you 1.5 million, then I think this happens because, you know, in other funding devices, they say, okay, you asked for 2.5 million, we don't have 2.5 million, we have 2.2, go away. I don't think this is the case here. I think that the panel can reasonably trim your budget and still give you the money if it deemed to be feasible and reasonable. One personal note is that I was once cut the requested administrative support, which my institution has sort of forced me to do, and the panel said, go away, your administrative support should be given to you by your institution. We're giving you money for research. That's pretty much what I wanted to mention in general terms. And do I have some time?
Yeah, we do not have any questions. So if you have some points you want to elaborate, feel free. And I also have 2 questions, one for each of you. So,
do we have the audience actually?
Sorry?
Do we have the audience?
Yeah, we do have an audience, 40 people here. Well, I have a question for you, Eugene. How did you become an evaluator? Because that's a question that I often receive as an NCP. How do one become an ERC evaluator? Because that's something that a lot of people, researchers, would like to become.
Well, you get a letter in the mail.
Yeah. That's the important point.
Yeah, usually my understanding, the way it goes is that somebody up in heaven chooses the chair of the panel. So, and then we have the chair of the panel, and the chair looks around and probably with some help from the ERC, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's the ERC's vice president who is in charge of appointing evaluators.
And so the
Robin
chair
can elaborate.
would choose the people whom she wants to have on the panel, and then writes letters. And I think most people would be happy to sit on this panel for more than one reason. The main reason is that you get exposed to the amazingly high quality ideas, and it's always fun to look at them.
Yeah.
Tell
Selma,
me-
do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to add indeed here. So the making the panels is a very complex business because there is a set of rules that need to be fulfilled. So this is completely under the responsibility of the vice president of the domain, those names come actually from the whole from the old scientific council. So we have a scientific council composed of different scientists, well-known scientists, and they are covering different areas of research, and they are the ones providing those suggestions that will then be looked up by the vice president until the panel is composed. So actually the panel chair is not the one in charge of making and selecting the other panel members there. So we want that this process is totally decoupled from the role of the panel chair. So this is entirely in the remit of the scientific council. So they have, of course, their networks, they suggest people, and then there is a set of rules that need to be fulfilled so that those panels are composed. For example, there is a maximum percentage of grantees in the panel. So only 40% of the panel members can have a grant, because we don't want, of course, that we are perceived as a closed club, that only people with a grant can evaluate others that will join the club. There is, of course, only a maximum of 2 panel members per country. There is only 1 person per OST institution, even, of course, if the panel members are not representing their OST institutions. They are there in their personal capacity for their knowledge. And then, of course, there is also a maximum amount of time that they can serve, exactly to ensure this, on one side, continuity, 4 times, actually.
Is it now?
So I've seen you have served in 2008, 11. I
think I served 3 times.
You served 4 times.
Did I? Okay.
Yes. If my data is, I can see you served in 2008, 2010, 12, and 14. So there is always a gap year. So you served between 2010 and 2012. You got your grant in 2011. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly the reason why our panel members always have 1 gap year, is that they can apply in the gap year. That's so, right. And you can apply maximum 4 times. And then there is what we call a cool-off period of 4 years, during which you cannot come again. But after this time, if your name is again suggested, and depending on the panel composition we have, you can be re-invited for what we call a second mandate.
I see. Good, thanks.
We have received 2 questions in the chat. I will read the first one aloud. The question is the ERC starting grant looking for high risk and high gain project? Perhaps you can start, Selma.
Yes, so we always look for high risk, high gain, although, of course, risk is not part of the assessment criteria. So there is, of course, also a discussion what means high risk, high gain. It means, and it should be interpreted by the panel like, we are here to take risks, provided that the potential gain is high. So if I have a project that's very high risk, but the gain is very small, I mean, the panel asks, why should I bet my money here? If I have projects that have a high risk with a potentially I gain, that's where I am going to bet my money. But if you have a project that is low risk I gain, then you should say, I'm going to bet all my money here because the results are guaranteed. But don't forget that we put the level high. We will have to generate new knowledge. So this is there. So the combination of those two conditions, I gain in terms of scientific knowledge and low risk, normally is not there. So in order to go beyond the state of the art, to generate a new product, a new service, to combine existing knowledge to reach something, there is normally a high risk associated with that, with I gain. So basically, this is used to tell panels, please take the risk, because that's why ERC was created. And actually, as you probably know, we do assess the projects at the end of their life cycle. And we have seen that most of the projects do produce excellent results, or they even have result in a breakthrough, and only 4% of them are failures. And actually, we looked very carefully. Why were those failures there? Was this a misjudgment, or it's because the assumptions were wrong? Or what's the problem here? And sometimes people say, are the panels brave enough to take enough risk? Is it 4%, 5% good for a program that wants to fund high risk research, I gain? So, but basically this high risk, I gain is there to say that those projects normally have a risk, and panels are encouraged to take those risks, provided that the potential gain is high.
Perfect. You want to add anything to the answer, Eugene?
No, I think this is.
Then we have the second question. It goes, many universities requires an overhead on the budget for the administration. What are the rules on overhead for ERC?
So the overhead is defined, is imposed there. So it's 25%. So there is nothing you can do. And actually, Eugene was mentioning that in one case, the scientific, administrative support was not accepted. Yeah. So at this moment, there are some universities that have said that this is not part or covered by the 25% overheads. And in some cases, this can be accepted to have a kind of a project manager that will help managing the project in terms of the purchases, in terms of recruitment and so on. And in this can be funded. There is nothing, just to say, there is nothing in our rules that prevents this as a cost that is necessary to deliver the action, as we use in our jargon internally.
I actually have a question. Are there any rules nowadays with covering the salary of the PI from the ERC grant?
There is no rules. We don't look into salaries. I mean, because again, this is very different from country to country. Mm-hmm. There are even grants that are not claiming the costs of the principal investigator, because those are covered by the university. So, sure. And costs, this is not something that should impact the assessment. It's just a decision that is made by the Austin institution together with the PI, and they decide that the budget to cover the costs or the salary of the PI should not be part of the budget because it's covered by another fund. So none of those situations are to be considered during the assessment. Of course, what is considered is if the money that is being requested, it makes sense and is proportional to what is intended. For example, I think Eugene recalls those discussions. We are not going to say, oh, the salary of PhD student or postdoc is too high or is too low, but instead the panel is going to say they are claiming 5 postdocs or 5 PhD students, and we do not see that this is necessary. And therefore, when there is a recommendation in terms of the budget is along those lines. The 5 postdocs claim do not seem necessary to tackle a project of this magnitude, and therefore there will be a reduction, and the calculation of the budget or the impact in the budget is then made. But the discussions are always along those lines and never about salaries.
Mhm.
We have the last question from one in the audience, and he or she is asking, are we expected to stay within our narrow area of expertise, or do we also propose research to adjust in adjusted areas that we want to expand into, in which we might not have that many publications yet?
Well,
Good question.
it's a very good question, and there is no definitive answer to that. So if you are going to do whatever you've been doing in the past, you won't get the grant. If you are proposing to do something that you've never shown even any remote achievement in, you won't get the grant. So there is this golden balance. You know, if I were in the panel, so okay, let me be a little more specific. So, you know, if I'm a physicist and all of a sudden I decided to do molecular biology, I better prove two things. First is that I can offer molecular biologists some of my knowledge and expertise that is really rare there by, for instance, proposing some wonderful new method of doing something, whatever is relevant there. And on the other hand, I need to demonstrate that I know molecular biology to the point that I can set the goals which are interesting for molecular biologists. If you do that, then I would say you would have a high chance of advancing with this grant. Yeah.
So I think if I may add here, I think there are 2 points that are also important to mention in the context that Eugene to a large extent already mentioned. So as I also said during the presentation, the PI needs to be the driving force behind. So if you are working in a field where you don't have enough knowledge, there is very questionable how you will be able to manage a project and conduct the team in a way that the objectives are going to be achieved. Because as I said, those are individual grants. So obviously it is also true that the PI sometimes does not have all the knowledge necessary for the grant. Therefore, you will have to explain how the team is going to help him delivering what is proposed. So it's the PI together with this team. And then sometimes these collaborations are necessary. This is fine. But as I said, at any moment, you should doubt that the PI is the driving force behind. The other thing I would like to mention is in terms of this multidisciplinarity, if you want. Multidisciplinary per se is not an evaluation criteria. It might be that in some areas to have a project that is as ambitious that it will advance the state of the art, you need to go a bit cross-domain or cross-panel, but multidisciplinarity per se, it's not an evaluation criteria. So I think this is important also to be emphasized enough.
Thank you. Then we have a new question. It goes, besides the normal academic frames in the ERC project, you can also, in special cases, apply for additional expenses, 1 million euros for extra equipment or so. We've heard that this is only given in very rare cases and that should normally be avoided. It should at the same time be feasible. Any reflection on this? Thanks. It's a very good question. I often receive it also as an NCP. So yeah. Is it likely to get the extra million for special equipment? What's your experience with that proposal?
Maybe I let Eugene tell what is his experience in PE2. And then I can also tell what I observed in the panel until very recently. I was the coordinator of P7. I know that some communities have the tendency to be more stringent than others. And then I can tell you what is our guidance from the side of ERC.
So in my experience, I've never applied for such thing myself. On the panel, I remember one or two cases maybe. And if I'm not mistaken, once it was actually with a project related to CERN, and the person wanted some extra piece of equipment, which was, in his or her opinion, really necessary, and I think it was granted. I can only repeat that it should be really well justified, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah. So indeed, so always what we say is that it needs to be justified. It has to be justified from the scientific point of view. Sometimes we see that panels start discussing, oh, but this institution should have this microscope, or they should have this equipment or the other. We always say this is not about us. First of all, you cannot know all equipment that is available there. We always say, please check if this is necessary from the scientific point of view. And if this is necessary from the scientific point of view, then the money should be given. It's very important to be remarked. If you get, let's say, $500,000 to buy a certain piece of equipment, this money can only be used to buy this piece of equipment. This money cannot at a later stage be used to personnel or to consumables. So this money is given with a very specific objective and needs to be used for this specific objective. Also, if you say that this microscope costs $500,000 and in fact it only costs 100K, the remaining 400K are going to be lost and cannot be used in anything else. So I think it's also very important that people understand this. And we already have seen that in some cases, the panel found that this piece of equipment was not necessary from the scientific point of view. And we also have to remember that the grants are portable. And then sometimes this portability is injured because a certain piece of equipment that was not there was not financed, and therefore the principal investigator cannot move to a certain another location. So I think it's like Jean said, the panel needs to be convinced that this is necessary, and this is definitely one of the questions that is always asked to the applicant when he or she sees the panel and during the interview. From the moment there is extra budget, there will be the question, explain us why you need this extra budget to buy this or to buy that. And then all the concerns of the panel are addressed on that at that moment, and later on then the decision comes naturally after having had a discussion with the applicant.
Thank you. And we have a last question. It goes, is it a no-go for starting grant if your supervisor is part of all your publications? Can supervising bachelor or master students without publication compensate this? I'm not sure who will start.
Well, it's not a big plus, let's put it this way, if you don't have independent publications. At the same time, I mean, in our field, there could be subtleties, like the applicant can be the last, meaning corresponding author on the publication, and the supervisor will be somewhere in the middle, and it will be well specified what the role of the applicant has been in this, and it's been a leading role, and so on. But again, maybe Thelma will take it because I haven't been on the starting grant panels.
Yeah. So indeed, independence, of course, independence is in relation with your career development stage, right? Like we were talking about the person that got the PhD 2 years ago or 7 years ago, they will all qualify as starters, but they have, of course, different signs, or they will exhibit different signs of independence. But I think, like Eugene said, you of course will have a certain position in the list of authors, which is also again sometimes conditioned by where you are actually. There are some institutions that it's always the supervisor that goes as the last author, or there are some kind of conventions that exist there. And that's why we actually ask the applicant to explain what was the role of the applicant in this publication. And this, I think, tells a lot more than looking to just a list in an order of the publications. And definitely, if there are concerns in terms of the independence, this is one of the points that's going to be clarified and addressed during the interview. So, what, as I was telling, we tend to not to look so much into those, let's call it between quotes, tiny details. So we want to be inclusive. We want to make sure we don't miss the excellent people. And there are many ways of doing this assessment. And like Jean also said, don't be shy about your big publications. There is nothing wrong with having good publications in very well-renowned journals. The problem are exactly the ones that do not have it. And maybe they don't have it because of some conditions. And what we want to make sure is that the panels are not going to dismiss these people without devoting enough attention, studying their career, their track record, to make sure that the value is there and they also have the same opportunities. And that's also one of the reasons why we can actually pass to that step 2 3 times the amount of proposals we can actually fund, because sometimes the panel is not sure if all information is there. Maybe they are curious maybe about a project, but they don't have enough information. So there is also this room to move more proposals to step 2 that later on are going to be scrutinized by real specialists in the field of the proposal. And don't misinterpret me, but for many of those proposals, there are real specialists sitting among the panel, obviously. Sure. So, and then at that time, with all the information, the decision is made. Also, on top of that, we have the applicant addressing the panel. So we try not to exclude people a priori. We try to look further than the normal way of assessing the merits of an applicant via the bibliometric data.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really good answer. Our time is up, so I want to give you a big thanks for both of you for taking the time. And I know you're busy, both of you, so thanks for taking the time to preparing and doing this speech.
Pleasure.
Really useful.
Absolutely.
And to the audience, I wish you all the best of luck with your ERC application, and I hope this webinar will be of use for you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice afternoon.